Hello, welcome again to Ekene Banye's Reflection. Today, I want to reflect on Singapore. Singapore is a little country in the South China Sea. Now, why do I want to reflect on it? Singapore is a country that African countries can look at and copy some of the things that has made it a first world country today. In the 60s, when Singapore got independence, 1965, it was a third world country. Today, Singapore is a first world country. So, how did they do it? You see, if you look at Singapore's history, Singapore was a colony of the British Empire. It was colonized for 44 years. That's more than double African country, any African country. It was independent in 1965. And today, Singapore is in fact, not today, it has been a first world country for at least 15 years. So, how did it make it? Let's listen to Mr. Kishore Mahbubani. He served as a dean of the Kuan School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore between 2004 to 2017. See, I saw a video of him some years ago, and I said to myself, this is exactly what any African countries should do. I believe that is what President Paul Kagame is copying. So we already have a country in Africa trying to copy what Singapore has done. And so far, it seems he's doing it. President Kagame is copying Lee Kuan Yew. So let's listen to that video.
I was born in Singapore on 24th October 1948. So I guess I've lived in Singapore almost 70 years now. When I grew up, Singapore was still a poor developing country. Our per capita income when we became independent was $500, the same as Ghana in Africa. Either you can say the misfortune or the good fortune of being born in a very poor family in a poor Singapore. So when I was 6 years old, when I went to school for the first day, we were weighed at school. They wanted to see how heavy we were. And I was declared undernourished. So I was put in a special feeding program when I went to school, and the principal had a big pail of milk, and all the children who were underweight were asked to take one scoop of milk from the pail of milk. And our house in Singapore had no flush toilet. There was crime and riots, gangster fights in my neighborhood. So in a sense, I grew up in what you call a typical third world environment. And it's quite remarkable that in my lifetime, Singapore has gone from being a third world country to a first world country, and I have lived through this remarkable transformation. I was Dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy for 13 years, from 2004 to 2017. And I would give every student who came to the Lee Kuan Yew School the same lecture. I said, I'm going to share with you the secret of Singapore's success free of charge. And I to tell the students that if you implement this secret formula, your country will succeed. And I capture the secret formula with the acronym in English, MPH. The M stands for Meritocracy. Meritocracy means that you select the best people to run the country. And what brings many countries down, especially in the third world, is that when it comes to selecting the finance minister or the economics minister, they will give their jobs to their brothers, their cousins, their uncles, their relatives, and not to the best people. And Singapore did the exact opposite. In Singapore, the jobs were given to the best people. And in the case of the Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, when he went to study in Cambridge University, he was the top student in the class, if not in the university. In fact, his professors were so impressed, they said, you should become a mathematician because you'll become a world-class mathematician. Then he went to study in another great university, the Harvard Kennedy School. And in that university, he's one of the few students to get an article published in a Tier 1 economics journal. Very few students get articles published in a Tier 1 economics journal. So he's incredibly brilliant. And so if the best man of the job is Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's son, then he should be selected. Not on the basis of the fact that he's a relative, but on the basis that he's the best person for the job. So meritocracy is the first pillar of Singapore's secret formula. The second pillar is P, and P stands for pragmatism. Pragmatism is an English word, and it's an English concept. But the best definition of pragmatism was given by China's leader, Mr. Deng Xiaoping, when he said it doesn't matter whether a cat is black or a cat is white. If the cat catches mice, it is a good cat. So in the same way, it doesn't matter what your ideology is. If it works, you use it. So Singapore was very pragmatic. So it would take some policies that are capitalist and some policies that are socialist, and it would mix them up. And that's what pragmatism is about. You're not bound by any ideology. But the third pillar, the H is of course the hardest to achieve, because H stands for honesty. And indeed, what has brought most third world countries down and what has led to their failures in development has been corruption. And so Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, after he became Prime Minister, made it a point to punish not the junior people, but the very senior people. So when a deputy minister went on holiday with his friend, a businessman, when he came back, he was arrested. And so he said, why am I being arrested? He says, you went on a holiday with the businessman, he paid all your expenses, that's corruption. You go to jail. So when a deputy minister is sent to jail, then everybody says, oops, I got to be careful, I can also go to jail. So that honesty factor is one critical reason why Singapore has been exceptionally successful. So it's a combination of...
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Meritocracy, pragmatism, honesty. Three simple concepts which can raise African countries from third world countries to middle or first world countries. From my youth to today, most of our countries, African countries, have never practiced meritocracy. We practice a lot of nepotism, tribalism, in hiring, we hardly practice meritocracy. And that's why we're where we are, especially in public service. It's better in private sector, but we still hire people less qualified and leave the more qualified people if they don't know anybody. It's mostly at the junior levels. At the senior levels, we do a better job, at least in my own country, in Nigeria, in the private sector, in the senior levels, we hire qualified people. But most of the jobs are at the lower levels where we don't really practice meritocracy. So we don't raise the best people up the ladder. Many of the qualified young people suffer because maybe they don't know anybody. The people who normally get hired are the people who know someone. Yes, it happens everywhere, but we need to build the mechanism in our society where we open things to include everybody so that we can bring out the most qualified people. It talks about pragmatism. Now, that's where I will say maybe I would have failed if I haven't heard him talk about this, because a lot of us work on our belief systems, ideology. When I was young, I had a lot of socialist ideas. But when I became older, I believed more in the market system. The free market does a lot of good in providing services and products. Now, when it comes to things like education, especially the first 12 years of education, I'm inclined to let the public service deal with that. It shouldn't stop people who have the means to provide for their own children on a private plan, but for the whole population, we can do the public schools. Now, when it comes to health, we can also do the same. But living in the UK, I've been a patient on the NHS for the last 12 years. I know it works, but there's some very serious difficulties, which if my health care was private, would not be a hindrance. So yes, we can have a public system like the NHS, but then people who can afford it can also go private. So we need to be pragmatic to allow all these things to work. The third arm, honesty, is a big deal. Big deal. Honesty. Corruption is a big hindrance to African countries. Corruption, public corruption, is a big hindrance. And unfortunately, we don't punish our public servants who are found to be corrupt. We make everything a show. It becomes a tribal fight. If we catch somebody, members of their tribal group will shout that, oh, you are catching this person because it's from my tribe. So this doesn't allow us to deal with anything. This is something we need to work on. In fact, I was thinking about it. What are the major differences between Singapore that allow these things to work for them? Yes, you need to have a strong leader who is dedicated to the success of the country. But I saw something. Yes, Singapore is not homogeneous in terms of ethnic groups. It had Chinese, Malays, Indians, and other tribes. But the level of diversity is small compared to African countries. African countries have hundreds of tribes. That's one. Two, Singapore have little natural resources in terms of minerals. So the country didn't have minerals that people can easily sell. So they had to devise a service which will earn them foreign currency. See, unlike African countries, all of us have one or two big mineral which we sell. And unfortunately, we have become so dependent on these things. And that's why, if you check it, many of these countries that have minerals, resources, they are the most corrupt countries on our continent. Based on the diversity, ethnic tribalism, these things are difficult, but we need to find a way. If we really want our countries to develop, we need to see what countries like Singapore have done and copy, edit some things, and paste. So if you like this video, like it, subscribe to this channel, and put your comments. Let's talk about this. All right? Take care. Bye.